Forget the mammoths. Forget the giant bears. The most dangerous creature of the Ice Age wasn't the biggest. It was the one you never saw coming. A predator no larger than a lion, armed with 8-inch blades for teeth and the strength to pull down giants. This was Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat. While the mammoth had bulk and the bear had brute force, Smilodon had precision. It was nature's perfect ambush killer, silent, surgical, and unstoppable. When its fossils were first discovered, scientists didn't even recognize it as a cat. They thought they'd found a completely different animal, and that mistake set the stage for one of the strangest origin stories in paleontology. In the 1840s, Brazilian fossil hunters thought they'd struck gold when they unearthed some massive cheek teeth. The problem? They looked exactly like the teeth of modern hyenas, just supersized. So naturally, scientists did what seemed logical at the time. They classified this new creature as Hyena neogaea, essentially calling it a New World giant hyena. As more fossils turned up, it became painfully obvious that something was very wrong with this classification. The foot bones didn't match. The skull fragments were all wrong. And then came the discovery that changed everything. Those iconic 8-inch saber teeth that were clearly not designed for scavenging like modern hyenas. Within just a few years, paleontologists realized they weren't looking at a hyena at all. They were staring at something far more dangerous. This was a completely new genus of cat, unlike anything alive today. The renaming was swift and dramatic. Smilodon populator. The genus name Smilodon translates to knife tooth, while populator supposedly means the destroyer, or he who brings devastation. The name perfectly captured what paleontologists were beginning to understand about this creature. It wasn't built for scavenging scraps like a hyena. It was engineered from the ground up to be a specialized giant killer. Because what they found next wasn't just one apex predator. It was an entire dynasty of death. Not one, but 3 distinct species of saber-toothed cat emerged over time, each more formidable than the last. Like a horror movie franchise that keeps escalating the stakes, S. gracilis, S. fatalis, and S. populator appeared in succession, with each iteration larger and deadlier than the one before. The oldest, S. gracilis, lived in North America around 2.5 million years ago. Don't let the name gracilis, meaning slender, fool you into thinking this was some kind of prehistoric house cat. This smaller saber-tooth still weighed as much as a modern jaguar, roughly 65 to 100 kilograms, or 143 to 220 pounds. And unlike today's cats, it came armed with swords for teeth. About 1.5 million years ago, S. fatalis appeared on the scene. This species was built like a muscular African lion, but packed significantly more weight due to its robust frame, around 160 to 280 kilograms, or 350 to 620 pounds. If you thought a regular lion was intimidating, imagine one that's been hitting the prehistoric gym and comes equipped with 8-inch daggers protruding from its mouth. And then there was the absolute monster of the family, S. populator. Appearing around 1 million years ago, this South American giant was the apex of the saber-tooth dynasty. The largest specimens reached an estimated 470 kilograms, or 1,040 pounds, roughly the same weight as a medium-sized polar bear. This wasn't just a big cat anymore. This was a walking nightmare shaped like a feline. Unlike many animal species where only males grow large, saber-toothed cats showed minimal sexual dimorphism. That means both males and females reach these massive proportions. So congratulations, you had twice the chance of running into a giant killer cat. But raw size tells only part of the story. The truly terrifying aspect of these predators lay in their anatomical design. And just when you think it couldn't get more extreme, you realize even the saber teeth were just the beginning. If you stripped away the saber teeth and just looked at a Smilodon's body structure, you'd still be staring at one of the most over-engineered predators that ever lived. These cats weren't just big. They were built like biological tanks designed specifically for taking down animals many times their size. Let's start with those forearms, which were frankly ridiculous. Paleontologists examining Smilodon fossils discovered that the forearm bones were about 20% thicker than what you'd expect for a cat of its size. To put this into perspective, a Smilodon's forearms were more robust than those of the American lion, despite the American lion being even larger. These weren't just strong arms, they were excess power, brute force packed into bone and muscle far beyond what most predators ever needed. And then there were the claws. While modern big cats have impressive claws, Smilodon took things to an entirely different level. These claws were twice the size of a Siberian tiger's and actually longer than those of a Kodiak brown bear, an animal that can weigh twice as much as even the largest saber-tooth. These massive claws were fully retractable, meaning they stayed razor-sharp throughout the cat's entire life. Modern house cats retract their claws to keep them sharp for climbing and hunting. Smilodon retracted 6-inch switchblades designed for holding down struggling mammoths. Their heel bone was particularly robust and elongated, indicating that Smilodon was an exceptional jumper. Modern lions can leap vertically up to 15 feet or 4.5 meters, and evidence suggests saber-tooths could probably do better. Picture this, a 400-kilogram killing machine with 8-inch fangs, launching itself 15+ feet through the air to land on your back. All of these traits pointed to one inescapable conclusion. Smilodon was purpose-built for taking down the largest animals of its time. Yet for all this anatomical perfection, when nature equipped Smilodon with its deadliest weapon, it didn't stop at sharp, it went straight to legendary. At up to 8 inches or 20.3 centimeters long, Smilodon's canines were the longest saber teeth of any known cat, protruding well beyond the mouth even when it was closed. These weren't teeth anymore. They were biological swords that happened to be attached to a 400-kilogram predator. Despite having some of the most impressive-looking weapons in the animal kingdom, Smilodon actually had a relatively weak bite force, only about 1,000 newtons, which is 4 times weaker than a modern lion. At first glance, this seems like terrible design. Why would an apex predator wield the most terrifying teeth in prehistory, but pair them with such fragile jaws? The answer reveals the true genius of saber-tooth design. Those massive canines were so perfectly shaped for penetration that they didn't need tremendous bite force to be devastatingly effective. The teeth were narrow smooth and came to razor-sharp points that concentrated all available force into a tiny area. Think of them as biological needles designed to slip between ribs and puncture vital organs with surgical precision. This design philosophy created both advantages and vulnerabilities. The canines were surprisingly fragile. Their slender construction meant they could snap if used incorrectly. Smilodon couldn't just bite down anywhere like a lion or tiger. Instead, it had to be strategic about its attacks, targeting soft tissue areas like the throat, belly, or major blood vessels. When used properly, these weapons were absolutely lethal. Smilodon's jaw could open to an incredible 120 degrees, nearly double what humans can achieve, allowing it to bring those sabers to bear against the necks of even the largest prey. One precise thrust to the right spot, and even a mammoth would bleed out in minutes. The combination of surgical precision and devastating effect made Smilodon's bite one of the most efficient killing mechanisms in natural history. But having the perfect weapon was only half the battle, because when apex predators start playing as a team, the rules of survival change fast. While modern big cats are largely solitary hunters, mounting evidence suggests that saber-tooths may have been social predators that hunted in coordinated groups. If true, this would mean that Ice Age herbivores weren't just dealing with individual super predators. They were facing organized teams of them. The strongest evidence comes from the La Brea tar pits in California, one of the richest fossil sites in the world. These tar pits act as predator traps. When one animal gets stuck, the distress calls attract carnivores, who then get trapped themselves trying to score an easy meal. The result? About 90% of the fossils found there belong to predators, not prey animals. And Smilodon absolutely dominates the fossil record. With over 160,000 specimens recovered from La Brea alone, Smilodon is the second most common find in the pits. This massive overrepresentation suggests that saber-tooths were highly responsive to distress calls, exactly what you'd expect from social hunters who coordinate their attacks. The most compelling evidence for saber-tooth social behavior is what paleontologists call prehistoric healthcare. Multiple Smilodon fossils show evidence of severe injuries that should have been fatal, yet the animals clearly survived for extended periods afterward. One famous specimen shows signs of hip dysplasia that developed in youth, yet the individual lived to full adulthood. How does a predator with a crippling leg injury survive in a world full of dire wolves, American lions, and short-faced bears? The only reasonable explanation is that other saber-tooths were providing food and protection for injured pack members. This suggests not just social hunting, but actual caregiving behavior that wouldn't look out of place in a modern wolf pack. The implications of pack hunting were terrifying for Ice Age herbivores. A single saber-tooth was already capable of taking down animals 15 times its own weight. A coordinated group of them could theoretically bring down anything that walked the earth. Even the largest mammoths and ground sloths would have been vulnerable to a well-organized saber-tooth attack. For millions of years, this combination of individual prowess and pack coordination made saber-tooths the undisputed rulers of their domain. But to truly grasp why they reigned supreme, we have to look closer. Their dominance wasn't just about numbers or cooperation. It was about the way they killed. To truly understand the terror that Smilodon represented, you first need to see how it actually killed its prey. This wasn't the prolonged chase and bite scenario you see with modern big cats. Instead, it was something far more surgical and far more horrifying. Picture this: a group of giant ground sloths, each weighing over 3 tons, grazes peacefully in an Ice Age meadow. Unknown to them, a coalition of saber-tooths has been stalking them for hours, moving with the patience of experienced assassins. Unlike modern cheetahs or lions, these cats don't rely on speed. Their stocky builds make them relatively slow, but what they lack in running power, they more than make up for with explosive strength and perfect timing. The attack begins not with a chase, but with an ambush. Using their incredible jumping ability, a saber-tooth launches itself from concealment, aiming for the back or side of its target. Those massive claws, longer even than a Kodiak bear's, sink deep into the prey's flesh, creating anchor points that no amount of struggling can dislodge. Even when the victim outweighs its attacker tenfold, physics is now working against the prey. Here's where the true genius of saber-tooth design becomes apparent. While other predators would need to wrestle their prey to the ground, Smilodon simply hangs on and waits. Its powerful forearms and massive claws turn it into a biological grappling hook that can't be shaken off. The prey, exhausted from the struggle, eventually presents the very opening the saber-tooth has been waiting for. That massive jaw opens to its full 120-degree gape, and those 8-inch sabers find their mark, usually the throat or the base of the skull, where major arteries run close to the surface. There's no crushing bite like a lion. Instead, Smilodon performs what can only be described as biological surgery, sliding those needle-sharp canines between vertebrae or through soft tissue to sever the spinal cord or puncture vital blood vessels. The entire process is over in minutes. From leap to kill, it might take less than 2. The prey doesn't die from blunt trauma or crushing force. It bleeds out, or collapses from nervous system failure. It's efficient, it's quiet, and it's utterly unstoppable once those claws lock in. This strategy explains why Smilodon could bring down prey many times its own size. Size advantage meant nothing when faced with an attacker that was, in essence, a guided missile armed with surgical instruments. No wonder these cats dominated the Ice Age landscape for over 2 million years. But even the most perfect killing machine has its limits. When the world itself began to change, even Smilodon's flawless design faced a test. And that test would decide whether the saber-tooth remained king or vanished forever. Around 25,000 years ago, a new predator appeared in the Americas, one that would ultimately prove more dangerous than any saber-tooth. Humans had arrived, and their timing couldn't have been worse. By the time people reached the Americas, only the two largest saber-tooth species remained, S. fatalis and the massive S. populator. This meant that early Americans were sharing their landscape with the most formidable predators the saber-tooth lineage had ever produced. The relationship between humans and saber-tooths was inevitably tense. Both species targeted large herbivores, creating direct competition for the same prey animals. Isotopic analysis of bones shows that humans and saber-tooths had remarkably similar diets, focusing on megafauna like bison, horses, and ground sloths. In a world where a failed hunt could mean starvation, this overlap was a recipe for conflict. Evidence for direct encounters comes from several sources. In 2021, researchers discovered petroglyphs that appear to depict humans observing a saber-tooth from a safe distance, suggesting that these interactions were memorable enough to record in stone. While there's no direct evidence of saber-tooth attacks on humans, the precedent was certainly there. Meganterion, an earlier saber-tooth species and possible ancestor to Smilodon, is known to have occasionally killed Homo erectus in Africa and Asia. While saber-tooths were locked into their biological hunting strategies, humans could adapt with tools, fire, and coordinated tactics. A saber-tooth might have been perfectly built to bring down a mammoth, but it had no answer for spears, atlatls, and organized group attacks. The coexistence was brief and likely violent on both sides. Humans certainly killed saber-tooths when the opportunity arose. These cats represented both a threat to be eliminated and a source of valuable resources. Meanwhile, the occasional human probably ended up on the wrong end of those 8-inch sabers, though such incidents likely became rarer as people developed better strategies for avoiding and confronting large predators. But the arrival of humans was only part of a much bigger catastrophe unfolding across the Americas. The very foundations of the Ice Age ecosystem were beginning to collapse, because even the most perfect predator can't outrun the breakdown of the world it was built to rule. And this collapse was no isolated event. Across prehistory, the Earth was a stage for unrelenting terror. Oceans boiling with monsters, skies shadowed by winged giants, and lands prowled by predators no human could ever truly escape. Click here to witness why the prehistoric world itself was pure nightmare horror. Until next time, this is Roaring Echo. Thank you for watching.